Your diving buddy, a pleasant girl you've just met on the boat, slips through the school of fish aiming down at the murky wreck deep on the ocean floor. It's too deep for you guys. You enjoy the view from above. The dive master firmly declared just a few minutes ago. But, amused by her dare, you follow. 30 feet on your depth gauge. No big deal. You close in on those long flipper-ended legs, gracefully undulating from her delightfully full hips. As you descend at the steep angle, you realize you both go deeper than the dive master would like, but you feel just great. In fact, you have this thrill, like a Superman, something you haven't felt since being a little boy. Then, your partner turns her face to you, and you are stricken with her amazing beauty, something you missed on the boat for some reason. In the darkening water, her eyes glow behind the mask like two gorgeous ponds of liquid bliss, clearly calling you to come and dissolve in ecstasy. Overpowered, you scissor your body into a vertical dive with barely a glance at the depth gauge. Your eyes skim over the 100 feet mark in a constricted, tunnel-like field of view. No matter. Your brain hardly registers. Now, as you power down at 90 degrees, you see your buddy transforming into her real form. Somehow, she has no scuba gear or diving goggles anymore. But now, instead of legs and flippers, she has a long tail, softly shining in the dim water. She smiles sweetly, inviting you to follow her into the ship's black doorway. Suddenly, you turn anxious. Will you have the courage to kiss a real mermaid? And what about that ridiculous scuba regulator in your mouth? However, before you can spit out your air source, you feel someone rudely jerking on your shoulder. Surprised and disgusted, you notice the dive instructor hysterically stabbing his thumbs up. He stops his signal only to yank the mermaid's arm. Ugh, no respect. Interestingly, her air tank and mask are back. By the time you reach the surface, you understand. Diving too deep, you experienced nitrogen narcosis, the effect of breathing ordinary air under high pressure. That's why deep divers use special air mixes, with helium, for example, for deep dives. Fortunately, nitrogen narcosis leaves no permanent damage. In a way, it's like having nitrous oxide at the dentist's office. No effects. That is, unless you drown. Bad judgment or even hallucinations that come with diving narcosis can do that, especially in cold water or under stress. But once on the boat and having recovered your reason, you realize that one effect of the narcosis is not going away. When you steal a look into your buddy's eyes, downcast timidly while the dive master harangues you both, you still see those liquid pools of joy you saw at the ocean floor, and you may remember them for a lifetime. Even when your partner gains weight, suffers a bad back, or bouts of foul mood happen more often, you know the mermaid is still there. You saw her with your own eyes. Impaired judgment, distorted perception, even hallucinations, all perfectly spiced up with a sky-high happy excitement. Does one need to dive to unreasonable depths in order to have his or her brain scrambled enough to experience such mental disorder? Could such a mental condition happen on dry land? Without leaving the brain damaged and a psychiatric diagnosis on file. Millions of persons who never put a foot into deep water will recognize this psychosomatic syndrome without hesitation. I've had it, they will declare. Call it narcosis, madness, or whatever you want for me. It was love. But can they be trusted? Believers in romantic love might suffer from delusions. A lot of industries like jewelers, cruise lines, or filmmakers have very good reasons to power the myth of romance because the public's desire to be loved translates into a lot of money. People will go to extremes just to get noticed. Mass delusions powered by cultural pressure are common. Any day of the week, a flick of a finger on the TV remote can demonstrate profound mass beliefs brought about by upbringing. The faith of romantic love must be even easier to proselytize because, unlike divided and warring religions, it conquered all cultures. The whole planet seems to have agreed, love is real. However, the concept of a flat Earth had just as many believers in its time. For us to accept romantic love as scientific fact, we must have some, even if incomplete, explanation. Why should these spells of craziness exist? What could their evolutionary role be? If romantic passion is a real biological process, it should have left some tracks in our brains. Who knows? With a bit of luck, maybe we could catch those feelings at play. Our ancestors likely had their favorite sex mates for millions of years, but the idea of romantic love came into existence only about 800 years ago. French troubadours get credit for inventing romance for enjoyment of court ladies, bored to death while their husbands pillaged a neighboring principality. Clearly, the original concept of courtly love was evolution's head fake, as it explicitly forbid sexual relations. But it helped to refine the couple's emotional attachment, as it separated from the groaning, messy, copulatory pleasures. Once thought into existence, romantic love took the lead. It took control of procreation and ingrained itself into our social organization as deep as a biologic law. Slowly at first, but rapidly picking up speed throughout the previous century, the concept of romantic love pushed us to abandon arranged marriages, at least in the Western civilization, legitimize cross-class unions, and accept transracial relationships. For better or worse, our genetic pool experienced a powerful mixing thrust. The effects of this amalgamation extended far beyond our social mores, transforming the DNA composition of 21st century humanity and changing us into a more uniform biological species. 1,000 cultural innovations, like mass vaccinations or plentiful food, are modifying our physical nature with great speed. The invention of romantic love, with its novel reproductive practices, spreads those new features throughout our genetic landscape like grains of sand in a desert storm. Without a conscious intent, our romantic passions cross-pollinate the human DNA heritage with the force of biological inevitability. Why do we fall in love? These guys have their fancy ideas, but it seems the reason for romantic love is quite unromantic. Cost. Unlike other mammals, humans take care of their young for many years. Those big brains are very useful for survival, but as they grew, they required longer and longer training, until the cost of reproduction got out of hand. What's too expensive for one could be affordable for two. Evolution, the old manipulative bitch, calculated, but only if they can be trusted with a long-term commitment. She whispered a few words into some troubadour's ears, thus arranging a bout of madness for her best procreation prospects. The reason-defying silliness of romantic love would ensure that her new perfect gene packages, our babies, would be properly taken care of, high cost notwithstanding. But let's start at the beginning. Evolution was never subtle about her intentions. As soon as we barely start looking like we could take care of ourselves, she flips the switch. Where is this clue coming from? We are not sure, but the youngster's hypothalamus suddenly becomes a very busy place. Gonadotrophin-releasing hormone squirts into the pituitary gland, kicking off a generous pulse of gonadotrophin hormones, which in turn revs up sex hormone production in testicles and ovaries. Propelled by sex hormones, the kids' bodies change in front of our disbelieving eyes. But what interests us here is what the hormonal push does to their minds, and it's not much different from the way our lower-ranking cousins behave. Nothing becomes more important than the prospect of mating. Males fight, dance, and grow ridiculous ornaments to advertise their fitness, so that she, the female, could choose the worthiest partner in the nature's enterprise of life propagation. And this is not an easy task. It starts simply enough. The female mosquito does not ponder her love life much. A trace of her favorite pheromone, and off she goes to fulfill her biologic destiny. But as the brain grows, so do questions, doubts, and uncertainties. Do we humans even have pheromones? Everybody has heard of human pheromones, but has anyone synthesized one? If they did, they keep it so secret that they actually might be lying. The perfumes guaranteed to attract the opposite sex? Maybe they do. But they still rely on musk, the secretion of perianal glands harvested from some weasel-like animals, certainly not humans. Even so, we are not numb to odors. Women, in particular, are good at olfaction. Not only can they sniff out their own baby, but they can also sort out used t-shirts, men's on this pile, and women's on the other. And in the bunch of sweat-soaked shirts, they will identify the one that pleases them the most. Seemingly, ladies are attracted to a specific MHC, major histocompatibility complex, the protein complex closely associated with immunity and recognition of self. The t-shirt's attraction resides in the odor that marks the males whose body antigens are substantially different from the sniffer's own. Cousins and uncles do not need apply. The purpose of sex is to mix genetic pools, playing wide field. No stimulus travels to the head office of our emotions faster than smell. It takes only one neuron to transmit a signal from olfactory receptors in the nose to the hypothalamus. No other sensory system has this kind of direct line. But, blessed with sharp vision, we perceive the world mostly through our eyes. Impressive bodies, amazing antlers, dominant posturing. Females have a lot of clues to consider before choosing the best candidate. However, no one has it harder than the Homo sapiens female. She will be raising her youngsters for many years after the mating opportunity. Her bad choice in a partner can be catastrophic. She needs extra help. No wonder she is a top performer in the mate selection game. She picks up bodily clues with the best of them, female choosers. But in addition, she has a superweapon, abstract thinking. Her abilities to look into the future, count, and comprehend written documents seem like X-ray vision, if only she used them consistently. Males, including Homo sapien individuals, fulfill their evolutionary obligation by doing their duels and dancing their hearts out, anything to outdo neighbors. But men go one step further. They also work on their resume because they have the abstract thinking capability as well. And if the audition goes well enough, they eventually get what they want. And the reward feels fantastic. Once the neurotransmitters like dopamine shoot into the brain's reward system, yeah, the whole affair seems very worthwhile, at least for a while. It's the gold standard of pleasure. After all, how many things are better than sex? And even if they are, the rewarding ecstasy comes from the same brain area. Having food or sexual craving satisfied, or winning a big gamble, or having a good snort of white substance. It all would be a shallow and meaningless experience if this part of the brain would not say, "Yes, now we are happy." And if it wouldn't say so, Would we bother to go through all this fuss and trouble again? But think of it. How inefficient is this indiscriminate pursuit of sexual pleasures? Who has the time and energy to run from one mating opportunity to another? Lower-ranking animals perhaps can indulge in the endless sexual escapades, but we, people, we have the planet to conquer, not to mention the neighbors. Whether it happened 800 years ago or more, evolution, a pragmatic parent, took a dubious look at us. These scatterbrains need more structure, she thought. Even monkeys know to choose a mate with superior genes, and without too many intestinal worms. These big brainers should do better. I will make them focus on one partner like a laser, even if that makes them a bit crazy for a while. And she created, perhaps through the hands of the troubadours, romantic love. Don't spread yourself too thin, kids, she declared, busily tweaking our brains. The enormously complicated neural system responsible for choosing one's sex partner integrates sensory perceptions, past memories, as well as intellectual and emotional inputs. All these elements are hard to track down in an objective way. However, their neural outcomes do show on functional brain scanners, mostly in the dopamine brain reward centers. Since the idea of love occurred to Mother Nature as an afterthought, she just tuned up the already present brain circuits dedicated to mate selection, fiddling with components until they sang romantic sonnets. Would that fancy arrangement work if we had no sex motivation in the first place? Unlikely. The sex preference system and its romantic love outgrowth had to be bolted on top of pure sex drive wiring. Interestingly, the basic and rude sexual gratification urge is driven by androgen hormones, leaving the delicacies of love to more esoteric cerebral play. A bit messy, evolution mumbled, but close enough they won't care. But these circuits are different. We know because sex drive goes into a pleasant snooze after having been satisfied, while the love soars even higher. Just try my new thing, evolution said. You'll fall in love and it will feel great. We tried. Increased energy, focused attention, and general feelings of happiness, sometimes not far from the border of mania, is what we got. But one must also mention quite a bit of obsessive thinking, fuzzy reasoning, and strings of jealousy. Altogether, no reasons to complain. Some people crave the emotion so much that they try to fall in love as soon as the previous romantic adventure ended. Romantic love is a hard biological fact, not a delusion. Whatever ended up in the concoction, we really don't know much about it yet. Dopamine, noradrenaline, possibly endorphins. It feels really good. Even the sex itself is better. Apparently, all those love-triggered neurotransmitters upregulate the fun part of our brain. Now you are ready. Evolution nodded. Take a good look. Choose one mate, then make sure you get her or him. Concentrate. Running around with those wild oats is way too expensive. Think of the future, she added, like all wise mothers do. To make the task easier for our unruly minds, she made all other candidates for procreation fade out, metaphorically speaking. When in love, who needs all those distractions? How did she pull it off? How did she manage to push back instincts entrenched in our brain for millions of years, in the midst of a reproductive storm? We may never know, but people affected with love claim that to unite with the beloved's beautiful mind and soul is way more important than having their way with that delicious body. Rather baffling, considered in the context of reproductive instinct alone. Romance over lust? No other animal would understand. We do need the concept of romantic love to explain this puzzle. Well, well, evolution said, listening to our love hymns, and she spiked our brains with some extra dopamine. Let's not get too spiritual and immaculate. This is not exactly what I had in mind. In effect, the less poetry-inspired organs get to play their tune too. Thus, new babies are born under the old madam's warm supervision. But can the magic last? The carriage made of pumpkin, the horses made of mice, they all had their expiration date. 12 o'clock and poof! Does love go bad as well? On average, 12 months of crazy, happy infatuation is all we get. Perhaps more madness like nitrogen narcosis would be bad for our health. Then, good love does not go bad like an outdated yogurt. It just becomes different. The high-flying emotions get pulled in closer to the earth, probably just in time, because by then the lovers' minds and feet need to be firmly planted in dirt. A new actor might be coming into play, and he or she is all about food, poop, and obnoxious noise. Welcome back to Earth, Mother Evolution says. Accents change in maturing love. The passion may turn down a notch, but the couple becomes dependent friends and partners. Not a bad thing. There is always more than enough work for two. But this junction of love life has to be explored more closely. The erratic sex hormone-fueled erotic flames, the brain-stunning narcosis of romantic love. These emotions just do not add up and form a solid sentiment, the attitude sturdy enough to last a few decades. The hard labor sentence of at least 20 years per single progeny requires a different material, one more suitable for all that wear and tear. The sex steroid fires must come down a bit. In fact, fathers and husbands experience a drop in testosterone levels. Instead, they gain a friend, a close ally who opens for them a whole new category of companionship, with levels of trust, compassion, and communication they never had experienced. The hormonal orchestra must bring other notes to the forefront. A new adhesive is needed to keep parents together, so that they keep serving on the slow, grinding job of looking after evolution's precious gene packages. But that change of tune does not always happen without a glitch. Evolution might have slipped here. Even the old schemer could not make the material strong enough to withstand the abuse for so many years. Many brides and grooms, so happy on their wedding day, will swallow tears of despair in the future. Fortunately, more often than not, this new emotion, companionate love, binds the romantic lovers into a union that will withstand child-rearing and more. It may last a lifetime, if well taken care of. The expression "making love" explains the maintenance process neatly. A sexual act pumps a powerful cocktail of hormones into the lover's brains. Prominent among them is oxytocin and, similar to it, vasopressin. Released during an orgasm, they not only bump up the hedonistic pleasure of the dopamine rush, which we remember so fondly from romantic love, but also do their own powerful magic. Known as bonding hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin provide the emotional glue that converts lovers into families, changes sex-crazed fornicators into monogamous couples, and matures half-blinded admirers into forgiving friends. More than that, oxytocin prods individuals to become a better member of a community. Generous persons are generally more civilized people. It also relieves stress and makes wounds heal faster. All that goodness for the price of regular intercourse? Who wouldn't want to sign up for the lifelong maintenance schedule to keep love at home? And remember, the orgasmic reward still applies. Priorities. Subject to 1,000 pressures every day, we sometimes neglect our love preservation schedule. We let the amorous fabric wear thin until it drops off, leaving behind a worthless piece of paper called a marriage certificate. If you don't make love, well, you run out of it. Perhaps we should not blame Mother Evolution for that failure. The system she rigged is prone to failure. But perhaps, as a species, we have not been monogamous long enough to get all the problems worked out yet. We are still in training. What evolution might have to take the blame for is the problematic provision of vasopressin and oxytocin receptors. Like every key needs a lock, so every hormone needs a receptor to latch on. These hormones will not unlock a devoted pair bonding, friendship, and trust unless specific receptors are well distributed in the brain's crucial areas. Consider two voles, small mouse-like creatures, almost identical in every detail. They differ in the number and distribution of vasopressin receptors. The prairie vole, a gregarious communal animal that mates for life, is a model father and husband, and he displays a dense system of vasopressin receptors in his brain. On the other hand, his cousin, the mountain vole, is a dedicated loner, a guy who finds it impossible to invest into his procreation, anything more than one night stand, and the miser has pathetically few vasopressin receptors. We do not have a lot of experimental data for humans, but we do know that men carrying a certain genetic variant of vasopressin expression have a lousy marital record. Could we, Homo sapiens, be endowed with a wide range of oxytocin and vasopressin receptor densities as well? And if we are, wouldn't it be nice to know how well this impressive young man is suited for family life before making the jump? Those missing receptors will not magically multiply in his brain just because he is loved so much. On the other hand, genetic manipulations of vasopressin receptors in mountain vole can transform the old bachelor into a pair-bonding happy husband. There is hope, but not without some gene therapy. Alas, no definite test of marriage suitability is available so far. A candidate's patient observation, longer than a flash of romantic infatuation, seems to be the only window into the future for now. Either that, or just take your chance. Nothing wrong with being lucky. One more thing for those addicted to the narcotic joys of romantic love. There is hope. That exuberance of forming a union with another person sometimes can survive many decades. Matured and blended with a lifetime of pair bonding, the inseparable mix of romance, friendship, and trust may persist. However, it has little to do with the splendor of one's wedding. This kind of happiness must be earned over many days and nights of his and her married life.